Our lead story today, the verdict in the Bradley Manning trial. A military court has found Army Private Bradley Manning, accused of the largest leak of classified information in U.S. history, not guilty of aiding the enemy. Now, the aiding the enemy charge would have carried a maximum sentence of life in prison. Manning was, however, found guilty of most of the remaining charges against him, including 5 charges of espionage, 5 counts of theft, and 4 counts of embezzlement. Bradley Manning's family just released a statement on the verdict to The Guardian. It says, "While we are obviously disappointed in today's verdict, we are happy that Judge Lind agreed with us that Brad never intended to help America's enemies in any way. Brad loves his country and was proud to wear its uniform." RT has been covering the trial from the very beginning, and I spoke with RT web producer Andrew Blake live from Fort Meade, Maryland. I asked him if he could tell us what the reaction and mood were like once the verdict was read.
Relief everywhere. Relief from the journalists, the handful of journalists who have been here for 19 months. Relief from the spectators who drove hundreds of miles all night to be here for what was actually only a 3-minute-long court hearing, more or less. Colonel Denise Lind took the stand just after 1 o'clock today. She read through the 20 or so counts that Private Manning has been charged with and then said either not guilty or guilty. The first charge that she read was the aiding the enemy charge, the most serious of them that could have sent Manning a life sentence. And the moment that she took the stand and said not guilty, in the media center at least, people just kind of didn't even know how to react. But then sure enough, a second later, she started going through the other 21 or so counts. And at this point, Private Manning could still face up to 136 years in prison. He has been convicted on almost all of the counts that he faces, except for aiding the enemy. But anyways, yes, people were very relieved that this is over, at least at least with regards to where it is right now. We're kind of in the home stretch here. We're going to enter the sentencing phase, and at which point we expect testimonies from around 40 different witnesses who are going to go up and actually talk about Private Manning's intent, his motive, what he wanted to do when he got to make that little connection with WikiLeaks a few years back. Aside from relief, the only other emotion that was really prevalent here today was absolute frustration on behalf of the media. Dozens and dozens of members of the media, the international media from around the world, were here in Fort Meade this afternoon for the verdict. Yet when the verdict was announced, the internet at the base died. People were not allowed to have phones. They're not allowed to have Wi-Fi hotspots. So pretty much any journalist who was here, which aren't many, but enough, at least for today, were unable to file reports in a timely manner. It kind of caused a really big what have you over here at Fort Meade. But this has been a trial that's been shrouded in secrecy throughout for the last 3 years. So to say that it was unexpected would be a lie, I suppose.
Right. Now, Andrew, Bradley Manning was acquitted of the most serious charge, like you said, the aiding the enemy charge, but he was found guilty of 19 lesser charges. You mentioned them before, but can you talk more about what those charges are?
Yeah, they're basically a bunch of counts relating to either espionage or computer fraud. Now, most of the trial, and frankly the boringest parts of the trial, the most boring parts, we're hearing about how Private Manning pretty much took his ability as a very smart Army intelligence analyst who knew how to use computers and harnessed that in order to get this information. Now, Private Manning had the necessary permissions to access most of the information that he was accused of leaking to WikiLeaks. However, how he actually got that material prompted the government to file a number of computer fraud and abuse charges against him. Now, also, in addition to aiding the enemy, which we said is now off his plate, the government has accused him and now charged him and convicted him of espionage, multiple counts of espionage. Which sets a pretty alarming precedent for journalists, for the media, for democracy in general. Nowhere near as terrible as if it would have been a guilty conviction of aiding the enemy. But these espionage charges are very, very serious counts. And if sentenced to the largest, the lengthiest term possible, Private Manning could spend 136 years in prison.
Meanwhile, he was found not guilty of espionage, like you said, for releasing the collateral murder video. Can you explain this a little further, please?
Now, out of all the material that Private Manning willingly admitted to leaking to WikiLeaks, that's the Guantanamo Bay attainee assessment briefs, State Department diplomatic cables, the collateral murder video, another airstrike video, hundreds and thousands of very sensitive military files. Now, out of all of those, collateral murder is perhaps the most well-known, and with good reason. Private Manning found footage of U.S. soldiers firing and killing civilians, journalists and civilians, from high in the sky, just gunning them down. Private Manning saw that. They wanted the rest of the world to see that. The thing about that footage, though, is that it wasn't top secret. This wasn't something that was highly sensitive. It actually had been out there. A very successful journalist had found a copy of it himself and wrote about it in a book that was published around the world. So the government, chose to let Manning off a little easy on that one, but like we were saying, it is still a possible 136-year maximum sentence based off of the other convictions.
Andrew, what was Bradley Manning's reaction today?
I spoke to someone actually who was sitting quite near him in the courtroom this afternoon, and I spoke to her immediately after the verdict, and I said, well, what was Brad like? What did Brad do? And she said that the moment that they read the not guilty verdict for aiding the enemy, Bradley and his civilian defense attorney, David Coombs, both got a little smile across their face. And when this spectator told me this, neither of us really knew how to react. And I've gone to this court many times. I've sat directly behind Manning a couple of times. I've bumped into him in the hall here at Fort Meade. And this is someone whose life was literally hanging in the balance with this one count. Now, yes, he could spend the rest of his life in prison, but the fact that they let him off of the most serious of charges is definitely something that everyone, obviously the defense and the spectators, the civilian spectators, the supporters, everyone was quite relieved to hear, including Private Manning, of course.
Thank you for that report, Andrew. That was Archie web producer Andrew Blake.